And we just push stop, right? Start.
Yeah, I know how to do it.
Does, Chris knows how to run it.
I know how to do it.
Okay, good.
Does anyone need an agenda?
Actually, I'll take an agenda. I didn't pick up the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody all set? Mark, you all set? You need another one?
Yeah. Yeah, what do you want? You know one, Jack?
Yeah, I printed up plenty of them tonight, you know.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, I suppose we could start talking with people talking about the great adventures they've had in the last few months, and both Finance Committee members as well as former Harwich High School graduates and so on who did the Apparition Trail. My son took him almost 7 months, about 2,300 miles. And John came back. Looks like he got a little bit of sun, a little tan, which is good. Well, we have a little bit of remedial work to do tonight on some of the meetings we've had recently, and things not getting captured because we have a shortage of qualified secretarial help, which is being, well, hopefully will be remedied. We'll talk about that in a minute, but the first thing is that we need to remedy a September 12th agenda posting error. The agenda was posted with town clerk, but it was not posted also with the administrative office as well. So what we need to do is note that the FinCom posting procedure has been clarified by my talking with the town clerk, Anita Doucette, and properly posting the latest agenda for tonight. So I was out of touch with that change. I remember now that we had changed to that, but I didn't at the time when I was filing it. So mea culpa. All right, any questions about that? No? Okay, good, thank you. We did not actually have a formal meeting because we lacked a quorum on September 12th. What I would like to do, because we did talk about things, but we did not take any votes. Make note of that. We didn't make any votes. But we called the meeting to order at 6:30. We approved the previous minutes. There were no reserve transfer requests. We reiterated the need for a recording secretary. The position was still unfilled at the time of this document. John volunteered to help me, but fortunately Chris and I work well together, and he and I both were working on trying to find somebody. Thanks to Mr. Sherry. He says, why don't you take a look at this young man? And I remembered him from town meeting and said, okay, I will. And so the young man and I met, and we had a good conversation. He's currently he's working on a aeronautics 2-year degree, I believe, if I got it right, and he's also learning to fly. And so he's obviously got some high-tech interests and abilities. So I did copy him on this meeting tonight, so he may show up later and may not be yet up to speed. John, I'm going to ask you to take him under your wing when he does get here, because we've got a lot of both things we're doing right. We're also going to have a lot of paperwork now that the budget season is nearing, and neither you or me maybe are as good as we would like to be on this. So if you'd do that, I appreciate it. Okay. And since we don't have a secretary right now for this meeting so far,
I'll take notes.
thank you, John. You anticipate my need.
Yeah.
There was a continued discussion on zero-based budgeting. Finance Committee agreed more information is needed, as well as input from Chris Clark at some point. Okay. We discussed, because there were no votes or anything in this document, I said that before, we did discuss the financial impact of the tornado. $1 million was requested from the state of emergency funding from the state. Request was approved. Funding of the request is pending. There There was, as you can see, we looked at the damage costs from all the damage that went on in both material and grounds and so on. We talked about the fact we still had a good chunk of change in stabilization fund, which I've been pushing hard over the last few years, and you've pushed right there with me. Appreciate that, or the other way around. Open session, we talked about revenues for June and July and August are about $400,000. Discussion took place in regard to adjustment to fees charged by various departments. And we motioned to adjourn from Tom Cherry at 7:20, second by Dan Torek, and the vote was unanimously carried. There was an article in the Chronicle about the getting some help.
On the tornado?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah,
comment on
would
that.
you mind?
So we had incurred, according to FEMA estimates, about $1.25 million. We actually were asked by the legislative delegation to provide that information, so we did to Sarah Peak. During the tornado, we had quite a few legislative people come out. The governor came out, the lieutenant governor came out. The positive of that is they all saw the damage, they all saw that there was a need, and they all made at least verbal commitments that they would provide some funding. We did not meet the threshold for FEMA, so that wasn't an option. But I would appreciate that the legislative delegation, Sarah Peak, I think, kind of taking the lead. When we sent her the materials, she had indicated to me that she would put it in a supplemental appropriation at the State House and would seek to get the money that way for not just Harwich, but all towns affected. So I think it was about $3.5 million. Harwich was approximately 1.2 of that. And she reported to me, or sent me a text, one of her staffers, I think it was last Thursday, that it was included in the supplemental budget at the House and approved, and is on its way over to the Senate and ultimately to the governor. I think Senator Sear was very supportive throughout this, so I would imagine that he would be supportive, and the governor obviously came out and was supportive of funding it. The other element that I wasn't fully aware of is that when they had the gas leak up in the greater Lowell area and some of the other natural disasters, I think it was Merrimack Valley, that the state, when there was not enough to meet the federal guideline, the state did pick up those costs. So this isn't new ground for the state to do. So the bottom line is it looks good. It's already passed the House, just waiting for it to pass the Senate and be signed by the governor as part of the supplemental budget.
Great. When will we see that money?
Hopefully this fiscal year, so prior to town meeting.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they vote it and then having their administrative people actually cut us a check, it usually takes a little bit. But you got to get the vote first to
Right.
have that authorization.
Okay.
So good news.
Yeah, nice to get good news. Give my agenda, yes, go.
A couple questions pertaining to that.
Mhm.
I may. Of the 3.5, you think we're going to get roughly everything we asked for, the 1.2?
1.2.
Yeah.
Not everything we asked for. The request that was originally submitted to them was about 3.5. That included replacing trees, doing stump grinding and such. So the request at 1.2, some of the costs we won't have to necessarily reimburse ourselves. So we put in for like administrative time. I'm a salaried employee, so I get to work as much as I want and I don't get any more money. So, but the town could put in for that, so that is eligible for reimbursement. So there will be an element where we'll get some money that we will be able to redeploy. Obviously, we should use it within the confines of the tornado, so one of the things we're thinking about doing is the stump grinding cost was actually a pretty big ticket. And Lincoln had come up with a plan that if we buy a stump grinder, advanced one, I mean, we have a little one, but you know, the number of trees that need to be done, it's about 57,000. So there will be a recommendation, once we true up all the accounts and reimburse what we did spend on overtime for police details and all that, we'll true all that up in the budget. There may be some left over, and at least the recommendation I'm going to make is to buy the stump grinder, because then we can have that for a long time and do tornado stumps, but then others for future times, and then try to plant some trees. We lost a lot of trees, public shade trees, so I think trying to, trying to re-tree the, I don't know if that's the right term of art, but re-tree some of the areas that were more heavily devastated.
Do you think we'll get close to 1.2? What do you think we'll actually?
I think we'll get 1.2.
1.2. And how are we paying for these, for the cost now? Is it coming out of stabilization fund or?
No, we
No.
just, we operated a deficit. The state authorized us to do deficit spending. And we got that pretty quickly after the storm, the ability to do that.
So,
What, if deficit spending, the money's gotta come from somewhere though.
Yeah, we have sufficient cash flow
Okay.
to be able to absorb in this case, $1 million. I mean, we have in reserves,
That's what I mean. It's gotta come
we
out
have
some
stabilization
pocket,
and
right? Yeah.
OPEB. I mean, those are probably about $6 million.
Yeah.
So, if we need to go in and do that, we obviously have some
Okay.
capabilities.
So it's-
We're not on a week-to-week basis.
No, but this was what, it's gotta come from someplace.
It has to
So
come from someplace.
The
That's
thought
right.
is that when it comes from someplace, that someplace will get reimbursed with this 1.2.
Yes. And actually, she put it in, she being Carol, and I guess Carol sent you a note that she had another commitment, so she's unable to make tonight.
Yeah.
But she created a line item under administration that just said tornado, and then anything related to the tornado, she put it in there. About $850,000 is direct.
now, we've been making good progress funding stabilization fund, and we took a chunk out up front real fast when this tornado thing happened, $50,000, you remember?
Your
Reserve account,
fund,
excuse
yeah.
me, reserve account. We should replenish that,
Yeah, I would replenish.
as well
that.
as putting a chunk in for next year. Okay, good, thank you, Chris. Anything further? You want Anything
No.
else? Okay, so I want to pass out the minutes that John took on September 12th, and I'd ask you to, you may need to share. You pass that one.
I've got one.
Need that one. Can you grab that one back? Chris, you need one?
I'll take it.
Mark? What's that? Okay.
Pesky things.
I might stack, I'm in a meeting right now. All right. Okay, thank you, bye. Gonna get another tree taken down. So I would appreciate a positive motion and a second, and then a vote on this. These were the minutes that John took from the September 12th meeting, that we didn't have a proper posting, so we didn't deal with it until just now. So to get that back passed, I need a motion and a second.
I make a motion, we accept this?
Is there a second? Second, Manslow. Any discussion? John, you take good minutes,
Well,
seriously. You gotta teach that to our young men, because, sometimes they take too many notes and sometimes they don't take enough. So,
for me, it's just hard to take them and talk and
I know,
listen.
that's why I wanted to find
One
somebody.
thing at one time.
Hey, we've been working on this a long time. Okay, so no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, unanimous. Okay, next item on the October 20th agenda. Are there any fund transfer requests? I don't think so.
None.
Right, do you anticipate any at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay. We did the minutes, we did the rest. A need for the FinCom recording secretary. Since these minutes were taken, or the agenda was written, Tom suggested Jeffrey Hadley.
Henley, yeah.
Hadley, as I mentioned a little bit ago, some of his interests. He's interested, the only issue that I was concerned about, and I alerted Mike, or I alerted somebody, is that in the spring, when our work is at the peak, he doesn't think he can get off more than one or 2 days here and there. And of course, we need a recording secretary whenever we meet. I don't know if that got addressed.
Yeah, just in terms of that, Jack, just to kind of close the loop, after you had forwarded his name, I did arrange to meet with him. We had a formal interview, if you would. He seems like a responsible young man, so we did extend an offer to him. I think that we're in the process of, he filled out a query, so we're just getting the paperwork finalized. I did suggest to him, and I think it's hard to get recording secretaries, quite honestly, but I did suggest to him that if he was able to come to the meetings, get kind of the names and faces down and
Right.
get used to it, then he could probably do stuff from home. As you alluded to, he goes to Bridgewater State, he's trying to get his aeronautical, I don't know, aeronautical license, or I don't know what the right term of art is. But, so he's trying to do that, so he works and he's in school. So he's going to have some limited availability, but he seemed amenable to that. And I gave you guys him his number, and him your number, so you guys could just coordinate and schedule that.
Yeah,
So he's aware.
Yeah,
of,
good.
What we're doing.
Good. Dan?
I'm just wondering, if these meetings are recorded, is it appropriate for the recording secretary to look at the video and then record the minutes from the video?
Yeah, that's what I think in the long run we should
Okay.
probably do. In the short run, sometimes with the videos and it picks up the mic, you can't always say who's speaking. So I think if he came to a few just to get used to the personality.
I think a physical presence is important.
Initially, yeah.
Yeah, but,
Good,
if he's got a
yeah.
conflict with school or what have you,
Okay, good, yeah. They use audio recorders, small ones, in various places. So that's another way to do it besides the audio video there, just a little device. And I don't remember if that was Lori Gillespie or who, but somebody used that.
Yeah, I think Laurie used it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so that position has since been filled. Thank you, Chris, for your assistance, believe me.
What was the gentleman's name? What was the gentleman's name?
Jeffrey, Jeffrey. Hadley, Hadley. If I can identify him in a way that you may recognize from town meeting, he's a tall, lean young man who normally gets up in the back of the room at the back microphone to make a point that he has in mind during town meeting. He's not unusual to do that more than once. You may remember him unfolding himself and getting up and making his points and very politely sitting back down.
He's very well spoken.
Yes, he is, absolutely. Absolutely. He obviously put some thought into what he says. Okay, zero-based scheduling. The Ballantyne training proposal, I called it because he was leading the charge, evidently has been scheduled for tomorrow, October 29th?
The 29th is
29th,
next
week.
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. We did post, I think, on behalf of all, a joint meeting. So if you have a quorum, that's there.
Yeah. So October 29th, over at the Brooks Street Library, that's the basement room, the room that's in the basement there,
I
Thornton?
believe so.
Yeah. At 6 PM, Brooks Street Library. And the three operations will be there, budget for capital outlay, finance committee, and board of selectmen. Carol Coppola, I think, will be,
She's going to do the
Leading it,
primary
yeah.
presentation.
you'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much does the presenter knowledge side, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. What would you say the main goal is? Is there documented what's going to be? Yeah.
Larry's been a little bit moving target. But I think that the intent that he wanted to accomplish was to establish a common base level of knowledge for folks. So I don't know if people went to, Carol did a 101 workshop probably about 9 months ago over at the library, walked through. Did you go to that? So it's probably going to be something like that. We had initially started to prepare for a what-if scenario for some of the things that got voted and get more detail, and Larry wanted us to pull back and keep it more ground level and basic. So we've accommodated that request of Larry.
Has, on a different note, has the budget schedule been issued yet?
Yeah, the budget schedule was probably voted about 2 months ago.
Did we? I don't remember.
Yeah, I can send you another copy.
Oh, that'd be great.
The one thing that was on there was for the 21st, and it got delayed, so it would have been this Monday. That it was supposed to have Monomoy and Cape Tech were supposed to come, talk about their enrollment, talk about other issues. So the October 21st has been rescheduled to November 4th.
Okay.
So I know the budget calendar, I think, I'm trying to think where we have it on the website, but it has been in the selectmen's packet a couple times. But when I get in the morning, I'll send it to you guys again.
Okay.
It wasn't a selectmen's packet.
Okay, yeah, so you had it,
Yeah, I don't remember.
because that
Okay.
calendar's been, that hasn't changed in 2 months, so it's been, they have, well, the target dates haven't all been consistently hit, obviously, if we didn't do the 21st.
Okay. I met with, just a side note, I met with Mike Ford last week and gave him a list of names that I thought might be good candidates for this. And I told him, I said, it would be ideal if you could give it someone with a little bit of experience. But we'll see about that. But I also, continue to want to try to bring some women into this committee and have them hang around versus just, taking off, which they've had to do for job reasons. So hopefully we can get into the 20th century here, 21st century. What was the other thing I wanted to make sure we had covered? Guess that it. Chris, you want to explain to us what
Yeah,
this
I'd love
thing-
to I had well, for two of people, it's the same presentation I did before. The Capital Outlay Committee had done its work a little earlier today, so they had a meeting at 4, it adjourned around 5:30-ish. I think one of the things that may make this flow a little bit better, for folks that, I think most everyone's probably familiar with this form. I think what I'd like to do is just kind of show you how the form flows. So basically, in here, we have the department, so we have it alphabetically, so the department submits the name of the project. The next column on the top is ATM number, and then if it's multi-year or not, MY stands for multi-year. On the capital budget form itself, we have a prioritization listing, so they're supposed to say what the priority is. I actually fill in the potential funding source. My responsibility as the administrator is to present a balanced budget, so I capture as much as I can in these and have it for budgeting purposes. Then the next 3 columns are Board of Selectmen and CPC. Once they vote their recommendations, I will backfill in this column. And then I do the town administrator's recommendation, that's the TA. Capital Outlay Committee, which they made several changes tonight. I'll have to reflect that in here. I have not done that yet. And then it's a 7-year capital plan, so you see from 21 to 27 that those capital items are identified and try to be stretched out over a period of time. And then I try to provide some notes for any details or to put things in the appropriate frame of reference. The Capital Outlay Committee tends to focus on the FY21 for funding, because that's the most immediate need. And that certainly in my column is where I focus on too. What I'd like to do, though, if you could jump to page 4, and this gets a little bit to, I like to think that there's always kind of a work in process to try to make continuing improvements to it. But what this does is it takes all the material, and I do have a couple things where I kind of try to double check myself. So usually the math is pretty accurate, but where things are changing and developing, certainly there's changes. But on the top left-hand side, you see the funding summary. So my responsibility is to try to identify, okay, if we have the amount of money that we're gonna put in, how are we actually gonna pay for that? So I go through, not so much in this town, but in other towns I've worked in, that I have taken tax levy amounts that if you had a project that was within the tax levy that was being paid, then you could backfill it with tax dollars. Most of the borrowing that we do here, actually not only here, but on the Cape, is through debt exclusion, so it's outside of 2.5. And then borrowing within 2.5, so there's the two that are within the tax rate. As you can see, I don't think I've really funded much out of that in the past. Free cash, I do have another breakdown, which I'll get to, but this budget recommendation for capital uses $866,000 of our free cash allocation, and again, I'll allude to that. Sometimes we have reauthorized previous appropriations. So sometimes if a appropriation was made to do, I don't know, to have, let's say, a fire truck, and we had excess money left, that you could then reauthorize some of that to do another project, but you have to close out that account and then reauthorize it. So we did have that. I think the last time that was used was with the water department on some of the water department work. Community preservation funds, I do try to capture the community preservation requests. I did find that I missed one, so I need to adjust that. But I try to capture that. And then cemetery revolving debt exclusion is obviously the one that has very project specific.
No.
In this case, it's about 4 projects that are identified. And there is going to be a fairly lengthy presentation on Monday night at the Selectmen's meeting in regards to where we are with the DHY, the Dennis Harwich Yarmouth initiative. The governor did sign that, so that legislation has passed. But now, okay, how do you make that operational, and what's the impact on the town? So that will be discussed in much more detail on Monday night.
Okay.
And then we do get a fair amount of grants, so I do try to identify where we have it, where funding sources from grants. Golf maintenance, there are some funds, like golf, a lot of their capital is funded from their revenue that they receive. Chapter 90 is the gas tax money. So when you go to the pump, you pay federal tax and you pay state tax, pay at the pump, and that gets turned back to us, and the statute is Chapter 90 that authorizes the state to do that. So it's been dubbed Chapter 90 allocation. I think it's about it was 687,000, I think, this past year. So we roughly budget about 700,000. And then water department, they have retained earnings that they sometimes fund projects out of, or they fund it out of their operating revenues. Some we fund out of the operating budget, and then others are just others. The other part to this, which I had, actually I think it was the capital outlay a couple years ago, asked me to put in a few. So if you want to see to the right of that is by department, what's the spending level, so you can get a sense for where the dollars are in terms of that. And then the box in the middle of the page is the free cash. So free cash has been certified already, so we have that number.
Is that right?
Oh,
It's a little
yeah.
early, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, I think really since Dave Ryan left, we've been able to move up and have it in a much more reasonable time from an administrative standpoint.
Yeah.
The sooner I get it, the better, the way I look at it. But so here it's 1,446,115. We have allocated that a certain way each year, so you can see the 866 that's carried over from the top number here for the capital ones. We do fund snow and ice. We have to have, snow and ice is a little bit of a tricky one, where we fund it at about, I think it's $135,000. If you go up, you can never go down. I don't quite understand the logic of the state law on that, but, so we keep it at the 135, and then we provide supplemental by putting this money set aside from free cash. So I have historically done that about 500,000. I had to scale that back a little bit, so we could get some of these items paid for. I have, in the past, used some of free cash to fund OPEB, other post-employment benefits. We have a obligation to fund that. That's health insurance benefit for retirees. Cultural Center Operation Subsidy, we had a fairly lengthy discussion at capital outlay with that. In the time, I think the last 6 budgets, I've funded 5 of them from free cash. What that is the Cultural Center doesn't make enough money to sustain itself, so there was a subsidy that was allocated for that. Actually, I think in my first year that I was here, and that has retained, it has been historically 125. Now that it operates a little bit more extensively, we are bringing in more revenue to offset some of those costs. So I'm hoping to kind of bring that down. If there's excess money that we can put into stabilization, I have that spot this year. We don't have any extra for OPEB and no extra for stabilization.
And you won't forget to reimburse the 50,000 we advanced.
That will be from the
And-
1.2
and
that
then
we
the
get.
amount.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll reimburse the 50,000.
Just checking.
I've been pretty good about it. If I say I'm gonna do something, I try.
Yes,
to
you have
follow
been,
through.
I agree.
That doesn't always happen in government. In Chamber of Commerce, 30,000, we have historically funded that. Libraries, the 2 small libraries, 20,000. Cultural Council, the 36. And then we have a little bit of money I kind of set aside for unforeseen, prior years unpaid bills and any other small items, so about 25,000. So you can see that allocates the full amount. The other one that I was able to put in right next to that is community preservation. I have been trying to capture the last probably 3 years, the requests that come in for community preservation, and is there a simple way to show, what's the available money, what's the requests, and then what ultimately do they vote? So the way this chart works is pretty straightforward. The CPC, Community Preservation Committee, gets funding. They have 3 buckets that they're required to fill of 10% of the revenue, and then if they don't spend it all, it stays within that bucket. In this case, they take the money from last year, whatever was left last year, plus the estimated revenue for '21. So this is the 3% surcharge that's on everyone's tax bill, and then whatever money we get from the state. The state does send a matching fund. It used to be more. The city of Boston became a CPC community, so they really have taken a lot of that money. Just as such a big organization.
Now, is this numbers here, these are from article requests that have come already?
No, these are the available money that's left over from last year,
Yeah.
which was about $1 million,
Yeah.
just shy of $1 million, and then we anticipate about $2 million coming in.
Okay.
So available for the May 2020 town meeting,
Yeah.
about $3 million is available. Because of the stipulations of the bucket, the designated funding, we have housing is 375,000. Historic is 489, open space is 492, and then undesignated, there's really, for all intents and purposes, a 4th bucket. I don't believe it's in the statute itself, but it has been used for recreation purposes, so that 70%, so that's about 1.6 million. Really what I wanted to try to show in this, as you can see on the recreation and undesignated projects, the requests came in at 1.6. The open space came in at 1.45. Historic only came in at 109.5. Actually, I think that there was one, though, was to be determined. Was that your submission or from your group?
Not my submission.
Not your submission personally, but the library,
Chase Library.
Chase Library. Okay, because I still had a to be determined. Is that, has a number been
Yes,
derived?
yes. And that number, my wife, she's the treasurer.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. She finally got an estimate from a preservationist for the front door,
Okay.
and that came in at like 10,000.
10,000, okay.
And she gave that material to David Nixon. And she presented before the HDHC last time they met, and they were signed off on it, so,
Okay.
so that'll be acted on by CPC.
Okay, excellent, thank you. I had it to be determined, so I was just. So in terms of that, you can see that for historic, it has, the requests are 109.5 plus the 10,000, so that would be about 120,000. But in the historic bucket, there's 489. So basically, the CPC could approve all that and still have money left over.
Yeah, good.
So just to see how that flows. The flip side, you have housing, and you have 375,000 available, at least committed initially, and then there's 557.5. Actually, there was a request that I missed, so it's actually 757. Now, just as an example on the way that would work, if the CPC wanted to fund the housing, they have the 375, but then they can always use a portion of the undesignated fund balance towards that. So I think there's really two numbers to kind of look at, the specifics of the categories, because those are relevant to the requests. And because you have money doesn't mean you have to spend it. It still has to be approved by the committee.
Right.
But you could see that with basically almost $4 million worth of requests and $3 million worth of funding, there's not enough. One of those requests is $1.2 million for Deacon's Folly on a land acquisition for conservation purposes. So if that were to fall through, then that obviously almost makes it so it balances it off.
Yeah, okay.
And then I probably won't, unless you really are interested, but you can kind of look at the individual requests. I try to put as much detail into that project to make it pretty self-explanatory. But just, the way, maybe I'll take the Affordable Housing Trust ones right under administration. So the Affordable Housing Trust, we have 500,000 for putting towards housing project, and then 50,000 for the part-time people to help us, the staff people to help us. Then the funding source, so that would be identified under CPC housing. The 550 ripples down to the CPC total at the bottom on page 4, so you get that continuity in there. Deacon's Folly was, Affordable Housing Trust was 600,000 and Concom was 600,000. That's one where obviously the landowner would have to be willing to negotiate and sell that property to the town. So that's not a done deal by any stretch at this point. And then just the other parts that I had in here, if you would, just I need to have Carol update the tax impact. So we'll do the tax impact chart, needs to be updated. So that one on the last page. But the capital request by department, you can see the items in there, and then the capital funding by source. Really, the lion's share, there's 4 debt exclusions. Maybe I'll just highlight this at this point. The 4 debt exclusions that are here would come under, the first is under fire.
Still on page 4?
No, just flowing to the document itself. So for debt exclusions, if you go to the funding source, debt exclusion is just simply DE. So the first DE comes up where the fire department had requested a pumper and a ladder. So they had 2 requests. I believe one was for 600,000 and the other was for $1.4 million. So they were going to replace a pumper and they were going to replace a ladder truck. There is a hybrid called a Quint, so it has the pump capacity, so it acts like a pumper, but it has a ladder on it, so it can do the work of a ladder. I think the biggest difference is the Quint can go 90 feet and our ladder truck can go 110 feet. So it's about a 20-foot differential for height, but fairly comparable, 90 versus 110. So that is $1.1 million. I applaud the chief because if you bought the 2, it would be $2 million. So instead of spending $2 million, the request is only $1.1 million. So almost $1 million worth of savings by taking that step. And then the other 3 debt exclusions are on page 3. And the first one is the 5-year road maintenance program. That has been historically done that way. We match usually the 700,000 we get from Chapter 90 with the 700,000 for debt exclusion. We do that on a short-term borrowing, so the tax impact is not really that significant, because as we pay off a project one year, we add a project the next, so it stays fairly consistent in terms of that. And the next two, and really the big one, $9.9 million, and these may change. I kind of just put them in there just to kind of show an order of magnitude, is on DHY will facilitate two things. One, if we sign up with, or when we sign up with DHY, Dennis Harwich Yarmouth, the facility would be built in the town of Dennis. So it'd be design money, so it'd be $1.5 million towards our portion of the design, and then our portion of the plant, very similar to what we did with the IMA with Chatham, would be $17.4 million. And these numbers are literally, I think I got material today to try to update some of them, so these numbers will most likely change. So the DHY has initially here a $1.5 million portion to kind of start the design. The next one that you see right under that is, okay, once we have our portion of the plant in Dennis, you want to send them some material. So we need to resequence the sewer program, and phase 3 right now would be East Harwich. The thought process would be to shift it to West Harwich and try to take advantage of plugging into the plant. So putting some pipes in Route 28. In much more detail, Dave Young is going to come in on Monday night for the Selectmen's meeting and go through that material. So, you know, I think it would be better to kind of absorb what he says Monday night. The 8.4 is just contract 3. For phase 2, we have contract 1 has been awarded and is underway. Contract 2 is pending award. Contract 3, there's insufficient funds to do that work, so the increase would be $8.4 million. I think at the last Selectmen's meeting, I did a fairly extensive overview of why that happened based upon CDM's projections and why they were off.
Jack, can I make a comment?
Of course.
If you look at the year 2021, you're going to find a lot of departments that don't have anything planned for that year. That's not an accident. I think when all of the department heads came to our committee, they worked very hard to find what things they could move back, forward, I guess. A few years out, and have left those things blank. It's not that they don't want to do things, it's just that they think they can get away with not doing something next year, maybe out 2 or 3 years. So that, I think, is a very positive step. The other thing you'll see, at least from is anything that's done, most of the things that are on this CPC grants, those don't come to us, we don't pay cash for them. And so, if you look at going to CPC and you don't get one of these sums of money, that I don't think at least our group will recommend going to Texas on that.
Okay.
There might be some other ones. First time I've seen the use of free cash here was this evening, and I thought Chris did a wonderful job trying to put our money around. There are a couple of things that we would like to add to the pile, like the fire engine being one, if we can pull it off. But I don't know how that's going to happen. Getting it out of a vote, which is a tough thing to have. People vote. I don't know how that can get done. But I thought you should know those 2 points.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think culturally, organizational culture, that the department heads have understood that, there's a value to progress, proactively funding things, because if they know they're going to be funded, then they can say, okay, I can move it off, I don't need to do it right now, so then they can try to help with the timing. So you see, like, the ambulances are every other year, and you try, unfortunately, we delayed an ambulance, and then we delayed a truck, so we have a ambulance and a truck this year, the Quint. But normally, Norm tries to feather that out and not do two big pieces of equipment in 1 year.
Right. Yes, Dan?
For my own edification, 'cause this is, I don't have a really good grasp of how these numbers eventually fit into the budget. It's a 7-year capital plan, the first being 2021.
Correct.
Are those the capital projects that are going to be considered for the 2021 budget?
Yes.
Okay.
If you notice, and I didn't update this, but where I say ATM numbers, that's annual town meeting number,
Okay.
and then I tie it back to the warrant article. So if you take mine from last year and you take your warrant book, they better match.
Okay.
Sometimes things change at the end, a number may get adjusted or whatever down, so. But no, the department heads, I think, have been very responsive. The one that actually Golf had not reported before, they always kind of thought, well, we're a separate fund. So I did get them about 2 years ago, and this year, Channel 18 has its own funding source, so I'm going to try to include Channel 18 capital improvements in there. I think it's about 500,000 over the next 5 years, so it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's not taxpayer money, it comes from the negotiated agreement with the cable company.
Just to
Xfinity.
follow up, if the capital project is not approved by the committee and included in this plan, then it cannot be considered for, like, the next fiscal year?
Yes and no. The way it's been done before in the past years is the capital outlay committee will present, and then ultimately the selectmen decide what goes in and what doesn't go in. And anything that's on the capital plan that gets adjusted will make it to the warrant, so everything goes on to the warrant. The one thing that last year at town meeting, there was a change made to how the capital plan is done. And it actually has a significance. So what they said in that, and it'd be worthwhile because FinCom is included in it, is now if it's on the plan, you have to have 3 approvals before you get to town meeting. So the selectmen need to vote it, Finance Committee needs to vote it, and the capital outlay need to favorably vote it. I think we put 2 exceptions in there. I shouldn't say we, I mean, I just interpret what they did. But they put 2 exceptions in there. One was for CPC, statutorily.
Right.
It doesn't matter what any of us say.
Right.
CPC goes on, so that's just legally. And then if it was a citizen's petition, you could have a citizen petition say, we want to raise, whatever, $100,000 for basket weaving, and we don't have a say. I mean, it's a citizen petition, so it has to be on there. So those elements are on there. Now, technically, and the capital outlay had a discussion about this, that was voted at town meeting by the town. It has to be on the ballot and doesn't become, those changes I just alluded to, don't become fully operational until the ballot question passes in May of 2020. So the question was, Noreen had brought up at that, technically, we don't have to comply with that now because it's not on the books.
Right.
But the intent would be, do we want to try to comply with it? The second element to that is any change that is made anywhere on the plan is supposed to have a 2/3 vote to amend that. And if you didn't make a change and it was voted the year before, then technically it's only a simple majority. I think trying to explain that to town meeting is going to be kind of complicated. So it'd probably be my recommendation, well, if you think about it, any change, 27 wasn't on last year's at all.
Right.
So anything in the new fiscal year that adds, as one falls off, one gets added, everything in 27 is brand new. So that would be a 2/3 vote for everything that's in 27.
Yeah.
And do we want to try to break out and say to people, everything highlighted is 2/3 vote, everything not highlighted is simple majority? It may be just cleaner to ask for the 2/3 for everything. So they made a couple of changes to that will have a ripple effect in terms of how it gets administered.
Angela?
The capital outlay committee is not at all happy, I think, with that charter change, because if you go through and try and do everything that was said, it's going to be very, very difficult. And by the way, nobody during the making of that charter change had any time asked anybody working with the charter with this, if a change could be made or what would matter. It's difficult. It's to see what's going on here.
Yeah. John?
And particularly since, by the way, you have all these very formal changes, and then I show up as an individual and put in a $2 million whatever change, and it only has to get a vote, because it doesn't have to get 2/3. Makes no sense.
John?
A couple questions. One is, if it's in the plan right now, how is the plan adjustable for inflation? Because we're going out 7 years here now.
Yeah, we have.
So how do you work those numbers?
Yeah, we have on the capital forms that are distributed, if somebody has a $100,000 project today, but they know that it's gonna happen 5 years, then we do provide we use a construction inflation number of 5%, so they anticipate that out. You can see actually on the ambulances, the ambulances definitely do the 5%.
Okay.
So they are trying to do that.
And do they move things around, like, you pick an ambulance, or one, it's budgeted for, one is budgeted in 20, fiscal year 25. Could they move that up to 24 if they wanted to?
Yeah, they could. Actually, a good example of that, in my time here, the fire department operated 3 ambulances. And when Fontaine came online, the amount of runs coming out of Station 2 became much more dramatic. So Chief wanted to actually have the capacity to run 4 ambulances. So we did have a year in which we acquired a new ambulance, and we didn't change out an old one to go from 3 to 4. Generally, he has 4 ambulances, and roughly, he can answer this better than I, but he'll take an ambulance, and he has frontline ambulances, and then reserve ambulances, if you would. So he'll take the newer ones, will be the frontline pieces, and then as they get older, when they get to 6 years old or 8 years old, he puts them into reserve, and then the oldest one falls off and the new one comes on.
So there is some flexibility just because the capital plan isn't cast in stone right now. I mean, you have flexibility to
Sure.
move stuff around.
Each year, they make a new submission, so they have the opportunity to adjust it. The only thing I was saying is, under the new proposed, anytime you make a change, we're supposed to vote it differently.
Okay.
And just administratively, how do you identify what didn't change, what did change, and it's gonna look like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle.
Well, that's what I was getting at, yeah, okay. I understand that now. And I just saw an article today in the Chronicle about the playground over there. Big number. Where is the school's capital plan? Does the capital budget have an impact with the school's capital plan, or they're totally independent of this?
That's a great question. I would love for them to submit their capital plan so we can include it in ours, but they are technically independent, so I don't always, I haven't been successful with that. I'll put it that way.
No, I'm just curious. I mean, that's a
They do
big
have them
thing.
on their own, standalone, with
Yeah.
each school, so I don't want to make it like they don't do it.
Right.
They just don't, we could have a better level of coordination.
Yeah, 'cause we could, we could put a line item here of schools, and someone talks to the capital budget, talks to the schools and say, what do you think, guys, for the next 7 years? I don't think that's a difficult thing. But I was shocked by that. I didn't play around about that much.
Yeah, the playground actually is on here. It was actually a capital request under It's CPC.
Well, that's another
And
thing.
again,
Should it
because it's
fall-
CPC,
Well, should it fall under CPC, or is it a school capital? I would consider it a school capital project.
um,
I wouldn't consider it a CPC fund.
well, the purpose under which CPC exists, it's a valid purpose
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
recreation. They chose, I think, to fund it from there because there's available funds.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Any organization or individual can make a CPC request, then they have to sell it, but any organization or person can put in a request. And, you know, the whole idea was, when they were putting this whole thing together, was to make it such that there was a little more flexibility and a little more civic involvement than in normal kind of stuff. And that's going on around the state, obviously, so
Okay.
in a way to address your question, you
No,
know. It's not perfect, but
no,
it's,
I understand.
we've got a lot of requests that have been granted.
That's a lot of.
Tom?
Well, Chris, shouldn't this be discussed on the meeting that has been postponed to November 4th? When they're supposed to present the budget to us?
On the schools,
Yeah, on the schools where the
I think that's-
non-original and the tech should be giving us numbers?
but isn't that, I think it does come later, there are numbers, 'cause I think that is enrollment and other preliminary,
Yeah, preliminary, but it should, I would think,
but they do include the
If you-
capital as
yeah.
part of their budgets.
you would
They
have
do.
to, because if you know how many children you got coming to school, you should have a number of how much per student it's gonna take, so.
Yep, they
Okay.
do. It's just not at the November 4th meeting. It will
But
come later in the
Some
cycle.
clarification should come through this meeting, I would think, as far as numbers and in some approximate numbers.
For the November 4th?
Yeah,
Yeah, see, like, we haven't even started, we start this week developing the operating budget. So we do our capital budget first, and then we do the operating budget second. So I'm not sure where the schools are on their timeline. I
Okay.
think by December, they're supposed to have numbers to us.
Yeah. Okay, and further on this?
No, I just thought that, I had a few minutes and just to have people
Yeah. It's,
get a sense for the flow.
it's good, you know, given, it's like an early look at what we're gonna be talking about for the next 2 or 3 months. It's it's a good, good time.
Yeah, I just want to kind of publicly too, thank the Capital Outlay Committee, because this work is normally all done and doesn't have to be presented to the selectmen until December. And
Yeah.
the selectmen asked if we could do it early,
Yeah.
so I said, I would work with the departments and work with the Capital Outlay to do that, so they definitely have been very responsive to it.
One of the things that I want to mention is just it's a CPC issue. The one opportunity that we may want to think about, or they want to think about, is that you can spend CPC money on maintenance of the waterways,
Maintenance, don't use the term.
not maintenance,
Restoration,
not
right?
mechanical maintenance as a concept. Okay, you can do something with that stream using CPC funds to get it cleaned up a little bit.
Well, we did
That's different than mechanical maintenance, anything like that.
Hinckley's Pond was done under that.
Yeah, I think we ought to be, we're up to me, we ought to be looking for some more opportunities the next few years. There's a fair amount of money here that's,
Yeah, it was kind of interesting at the Capital Outlay Committee meeting. I hadn't really thought about it, but on the boat ramps, the recreation has several boat ramps, and, would that be eligible for CPC? And I mean, certainly, the boat ramps are there for recreation, right? Recreational boating. But I don't know if you have any history with that. Hinckley's Pond, we found out that another town had done that, so it was
yeah.
at
that's
least
possible.
theoretically possible.
When I first came on to the CPC and I read the legislation and that kind of thing, and the first question that I asked was, well, has the state issued any regulations to, try to narrow just exactly how the towns can spend the money? And I was said no.
Yeah, they
And I said, and I think I contacted the consortium,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, well, if you can find out from DOR whether they're gonna issue regulations or not, we'd be glad to know that. But for categories, recreation.
Yeah, and the three others.
You know,
Yeah.
and there are some definitions in the legislation, but it's pretty wide open.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Can we do fire engines over there?
No, they're not enough fun.
Only an antique one, maybe.
Only we give
historic.
rides on it.
Yeah, there you go.
Unless you want to
That makes sense.
make it an educational, recreational issue, you know, with kids come and ride the fire engines.
It's a good thing we got several more months to work this. I can tell there's room for work here. Okay. Anything further, Chris, on this?
No, I just wanted to at least give you an update, and I'll put you on the distribution list
Yeah, good start.
as it gets more updated.
Right. Okay. Anyone, anything else for Chris?
Yeah, real quick.
Tom?
Do we have the final numbers for the snack shack? Of what we did? Because it was, I think through September was like 400,000.
Yeah, actually, I saw that in your notes. He came in the other night,
Because I know we got to run
think.
up to Columbus Day, I think, or?
Yeah, he gets to run through Columbus Day. I think he owes us, I'll have to go back in the lease, I think he has a reconciliation that he needs to make in November.
Okay.
He did pay us the base, which I can't remember was based upon 8%. I can't remember the exact number of the percentage now. But he owed us $24,000 as a minimum payment. So he made the $24,000, and then he came in with a check for $8,500. So that's a percentage of his overall business. But we need to, he has a, all the registers have, the receipts. So Carol is the one that's, the finance director is tasked with kind of reviewing that to authenticate that the amount of money he owes.
The Monday's meeting, he said they did well. What, how many dollars are in well? So-
I know, I'm trying to remember, it was like 8%, so whatever, 32,000 of, the gross revenue. I'm just not that quick in terms of being able to do that, but we'll get that.
So that was the base lease, was 8% of the gross?
Yeah, it was 6 or 8%. We weren't, the nice thing about municipal government is you can copy. We're not getting in trouble, no plagiarism. So we took, I think it was Orleans, had a pretty good RFP and lease, so we used theirs, and they did it on a percentage of sales with a minimum. So if it rained every day, well, it came close a couple times it seemed, but it rained a lot. But if it rained an entire month, he would still owe us the minimum.
That was April. April rained the whole month.
Yeah, look, fortunately it wasn't
Yeah,
open.
the Chronicle said he was happy with his operation.
Yeah,
this year.
he did better than he expected.
It was pretty busy. I was there because I have a slip there, so I'm down there quite often. It was very busy there.
Okay, you all set?
Okay.
Okay, you all set?
Jim?
Ansel?
Okay, I'm all set.
You all set?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment?
Oh, can I I thought you were excusing Chris.
No, yeah.
I'd like to propose to the committee that at some point, some meeting down the road, that we start talking about expenditure reporting and budget monitoring.
Okay.
Talk about what we might want to do along those lines. I know we've kind of hinted at it at a couple of other meetings, but I'd like to take the time
Okay.
to discuss it.
I would suggest Carol sends out a monthly report electronically to all department heads.
Yeah. that'd be
So,
great.
I mean, if you guys wanted to be on the list, that's a simple
I'd
request to
love take a
Carol.
Look at it, yeah.
I get a comprehensive one, obviously being the administrator, and I don't see why they couldn't just put you guys on there.
Sure.
There's nothing secret, it's
That would be
all the
helpful,
money.
Yeah, okay,
That'd be
good,
great.
good, thank you.
We also need is the target.
What?
It has on there, it has the revenue targets, it has the expenditure targets, it tells you where you are on a monthly basis.
I was just meant the targets for next year. What do the selectmen want to see is the total budget? That's like
You need a budget request.
They approve our budget.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether they're gonna say, okay, we should be $10 million over last year or $10 million.
They authorize 2%, 2% over.
And we're over 2%.
The budget is set off, actually, you would be added,
Well, like last year, it was 7%, but 4% of it, approximately 4% of it was debt exclusions that people voted. So it's a little bit more nuanced than.
Yes.
What do you call that report, Chris?
It's a revenue expenditure report. But yeah, if you want, I don't know, Jack, if you want to reach out and ask her, if
Sure.
I think of it, I'll ask her to
Yeah.
just put you guys on the distribution list.
That'd be great.
Yeah, there's nothing super secret on there, it's all
No.
just finance info.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah, motion
make a
to
motion
adjourn,
to
please.
adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second from Dan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Good discussion. Good discussion.